Record deals and producer deals, management deals, and really any sort of deal in the music, film, modeling, sports, or art industry in general will typically have these 5 things specified within the deal. And it's a good idea for you to get to understand them before you sign any of your rights away. Welcome to Music Business Money. My name's Charlie Forster Anderson, and today I'm going to break down the 5 biggest and most important deal points that you'll come across in the music industry. No matter what kind of deal it is, whether it's a distribution agreement, a publishing deal, a record deal, a producer deal, a management contract, it doesn't really matter. Any kind of deal in the music industry usually has these 5 things in common. And before we get right into it, I'll just add that the point of this episode isn't really to tell you how or what you should do with each of these 5 questions in any specific situation, but it's more so to very simply outline that these are the main types of things that you should be thinking about if you're considering entering into any sort of deal or agreement with anybody when it involves your creative ideas, whether they be musical, visual, or physical skills and attributes, aka your copyrights. Which brings me to my first point. Rights. So under this category of rights, there's really sort of 2 subheadings or types of rights that are commonly dealt with. Firstly, your rights and obligations generally, and secondly, your copyrights. These are the 2 main types of rights that will be traded and negotiated in a typical deal. And for both of them, it's important to consider what kind of rights are being sold, assigned, licensed, or bought. Your rights and obligations typically include what you can and can't do. For example, whether you have the right to approve something before it goes public, whether you have the right to have creative input on a project, whether you have the right to walk away from a deal that isn't working out for you, or whether you will lose some of your rights and freedoms where you might be forced into performing certain tasks or creating certain products, like musical recordings or music videos under a record deal. Your copyrights, on the other hand, are your unique and creative intellectual property rights that might be traded or sold during a deal. Some of the more common copyrights that are traded are your songwriting copyrights, also known as your music publishing, and there's also your performance and recording copyrights that you've recorded into a tangible medium, also known as a sound recording. There's your creative input and creative direction, such as when a song's producer controls the overall direction of a production or a sound recording. There's also intellectual property rights in plans that a manager or creative director might have made with regard to an artist's overall career trajectory or image or look. There's visual copyrights in video recordings or photographs that you might have been featured in or taken or paid for to be taken by someone else. There's probably a million other examples of creative types of copyright, but it'd be hard to list them all. But essentially, if you own a copyright to something, you own the exclusive legal right to print, publish, perform, film, or record that literary, artistic, or musical material, and you also get to authorize others to do the same. You control that work, so to speak. So your copyrights and other types of rights are really the main things that are going to be traded and negotiated in probably 99% of agreements in the entertainment industry. If your copyrights are being outright bought off you, that's what we would typically call in the US a work-for-hire agreement. That means the person or company buying those copyrights from you are essentially taking full ownership of those copyrights and legally saying that they're now the author of those works. And you will lose your copyrights in those things that you created. Link in the description below for a more detailed explanation of how work-for-hires work. But anyway, under a work-for-hire type arrangement, you'll never have any future right to control or manage those copyrights that you're assigning over, ever again, and you're literally handing it all over. And that's totally fine, so long as you are adequately compensated for the value of those rights. Which brings me to my next point on the list, fees. So once you've figured out what's being traded, what's at stake, and what rights you're giving away or buying or leasing, the next thing you want to understand is what those rights are worth. Will you be getting paid a fee for those copyrights, rights, obligations, talents, or services? So a fee is pretty simple. It's a monetary value, a specific number, which is used as an exchange of value for the acquisition of some of, or maybe all of those rights that we were talking about earlier. A fee is often paid all at once, but it obviously can be paid in parts, and the person selling their rights would usually put language in the contract that disables the successful transfer of those copyrights or other rights if the fee is not paid in full or if the fee is not paid in time. But that's about it. If there's a contract in place that specifies the rights being exchanged and the fee to be paid, once it's paid, it's usually a fairly simple transaction. Wham bam, you're done. Moving on to point number 3, the third and probably most misunderstood concept when it comes to music business dealings is that of an advance. What's the difference between an advance and a fee, you ask? Well, put very simply, an advance is a recoupable fee. Recoupable here means that the person who is paying you the fee gets to earn it back before they have to pay you anything else that might exist in the deal, like a royalty or a cut of earnings or a commission or a bonus fee or some other form of income that is usually paid in the future. I've made another video linked below that breaks down the details and differences between flat fees and advances, so check it out if you'd like a full explanation of that. But essentially, if I earn a 10K fee for, say, producing your song, I'll get 10K cash and put that money straight into my pocket. And that's it. You don't ever get to see that money ever again. Maybe I've also negotiated future royalty payments, and maybe I haven't. But we'll come back to this part in a second. Whereas if I earn a 10K advance for producing your song, I'll get 10K cash and put that money straight into my pocket just like before. But this time, if there's any future possible payments like royalties or something similar, you now get to earn that 10K back from the sales and streams of the song before you have to pay me any future royalty points. You've given me an advance payment and you've essentially paid me my royalties in advance of me earning them. I've somewhat future-proofed my profit in that it doesn't really matter if the song does well or not, hence the payment being called an advance. And this is also why advances can typically be a little bigger than fees, but it really depends on the area of the music industry that we're talking about. I forgot to turn this light on. Oh well. Okay, so on to the next topic, and that is the topic of royalties. A royalty is essentially a division of earnings. In other words, out of the 100% of the available earnings, or 100 royalty points, if you're giving away your copyright or licensing your copyright, remember the intellectual property that we talked about before? Well, if you're giving any of that away to someone else to profit off of, you want to make sure that there is a reserve of royalties or residual future income that's going directly back to you. I might allow someone to keep 50% of my royalties indefinitely if you give me a big enough cash advance. Or I might allow you to keep 70% of my royalties indefinitely if you give me an even bigger cash advance. It can get pretty complicated though, so my main piece of advice here is that you should always get your own independent music lawyer who is fully dedicated to representing you and you alone, who is also very well versed in music deals and industry terminology. And this needs to happen before signing anything, and even before negotiating anything. It should be your first step, in fact, getting a good lawyer. If you don't get any royalty rate, or even if you don't get the royalty rate that you deserve, it can be incredibly disheartening to sign a record deal for only an advance, no matter how big the advance is, to watch your record take off and then earn tens of millions of dollars for some big record company while you're still sitting there seeing no monetary return for your successes. This is why an advance is important, but a good royalty rate is even more important. Alright, so on to our fifth and final main point of negotiation. And if you've got a keen ear, you might have already heard me mention it.
I might allow someone to keep 50% of my royalties indefinitely if you give me a big enough cash advance.
That's right, indefinitely. The next major point is that of time and duration. How long is the deal going to go for? If the price is right, it could be indefinitely, or it could just be a 6-month deal or a 1-year deal. It really depends on the types of rights being assigned and also the leverage that you have over the deal. If you're bringing everything to the table and you're calling all the shots, you may be able to control the length of the deal pretty specifically. Generally, the shorter the deal, the better for your copyright ownership and your ability to make money in the future. But that's balanced against the fact that also the shorter the deal, you can expect a decreased advance and probably a lesser royalty rate. The main question to ask yourself here is, are these rights being let go of permanently, Or are these rights going to come back to me at some point? However, just because certain rights are coming back to you sooner though, it doesn't always mean that there's less at stake. In summary of these 5 major deal points that you should be looking out for, and I'm kind of rolling them together here a bit, but essentially you just need to ask yourself these 4 things. Am I earning enough now? Will I be earning enough later? How long am I locked in for? And what exactly am I signing away? That's it for this video. Make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell to stay up to date with my latest videos. And as usual, feel free to comment below with any additional questions or topic suggestions that you'd like me to make videos on. Also, feel free to add me over on Instagram, links in the description below, along with all of my other social channels. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Wham bam, you're done.